Hi, welcome back to my channel. Tonight I am going to talk about tea dyeing paper. Now here I have 28-pound paper. It's a little thicker than normal copy paper, but it will dye very, very nicely. And then I have a tin, something shallow that your paper can lay in. And here I have made some tea. And I have about, let's see, I think it's about 10 tea bags here. So you just basically want to make a very, very, very strong tea. So I've got my tea. It's been brewing here now for, I guess, about a half an hour. And so I'm going to pour it in over my paper. So I get a nice golden color. Now you notice I don't have a lot because I also like to mix my tea with just a tad bit of coffee. So I have my strong coffee. This is very, very, very strong coffee. Sorry about all of that going across. I'm going to pour just a little bit of that in there. Just a little bit more. All right, so I've got my paper in, and for my tea, I use simply black tea. I like the black tea because it's nice and dark, and it will help to really get my paper a nice color. Now, because you're working with paper, you want to be gentle. You let this soak for about 5 to 10 minutes. Now, the longer you let this soak, the darker it's going to be. And I'm going to just give this pan a little bit of a swirl to kind of mix the tea and the coffee together, because I can see that they're kind of separated a little bit. There we go. All right. So you just kind of let that sit in there and soak 5-10 minutes. And then it'll get a nice golden color. And then after I take it out, I'm very, very gentle because, once again, you're working with paper, and paper is fragile once it becomes wet. So we don't want to tear it, although I did that a couple times last night while I was making my coffee dyed paper. So you can't rush this. This is a process, and you want to just take your time with it and let your paper kind of soak in all of this good color. This is a really pretty color. And you can either bake your paper. So I just take and put it on a baking sheet, or you can put it on parchment paper. Now, I will caution you that if you just lay the parchment paper on your racks and you put the wet paper on top of the parchment paper, to please keep an eye on it if you are going to put it in your oven, because paper does burn and you don't want to have any type of fire. I generally just put mine on a cookie sheet and let them bake like that. I bake with my oven at about a 250. I typically don't go higher than that. The higher, I just typically don't take my oven higher than 250 when I'm baking paper. I will go to 200, which takes it a little bit longer, but I typically don't go over 250 when I'm baking it. And I bake it for about 5 to 10 minutes, keeping a very close eye on it. I do like to turn my paper over midway through, just because I like for the wetness that's on the top as it dries out, I like it to flip it so that it can kind of soak back through a little bit. That's not necessary. It's just something that I like to do. And once your paper is dry, you can take it out of the oven, stack it, let it cool off. Just be mindful that it is coming out of a hot oven, so therefore it will be hot. And you can dry it with a hair dryer. You can dry it with a heat tool. You can dry it in the microwave. I typically like to dry mine in the oven. I just like the the color that it becomes, and I like the process of doing it in the oven. Some people like the process of the quicker in the microwave or the other methods. You can also just let it sit outside and dry. I typically, when I'm drying mine in the oven, I typically lay them one layer. I don't do multiple layers. Occasionally I will, but I like the way that it dries when you do just the single layer. So that's how I tea dye my papers. And if you try it, please leave me a comment and let